Okay, perfect. Well, then I am so excited to introduce our guest speaker today, Ms. Lisa Schiller. Lisa is our business vice president in the state of Michigan. Obviously, her name is extremely well known already in the world of Legal Shield, especially in our solutions market. She's been with us since 2004. Our six-figure ring earner, her and her husband John, millionaire club members. Lisa, I know you sold over 9,000 personal sales, and obviously have been opening groups and doing conservation and servicing our groups for many years. And we're excited to have you on the call today and talking about our group enrollment. So, Lisa, welcome to the call.
Well, thanks so much, Melissa and Keith, Heather, Teresa, Aaron, everybody that's on the line. And good morning, Legal Shield family. I have the distinct honor and privilege to follow Mr. Alistair Edwards from last week. So I'm going to, first of all, give a shout-out to Alistair. He did a fantastic job. So I'm first going to ask all of you, if you have not listened to the call from last week on the decision-maker appointment, that's going to be a to-do list for you. You need to go back and listen to how he handled that decision-maker appointment, because what I'm doing today is, of course, taking a segue from that into what happens between when the decision-maker says yes and you're actually standing in front of the employees to do an enrollment. To me, personally, is the most critical part of what we do as far as setting up a successful enrollment or an unsuccessful enrollment. It doesn't matter how good of a presentation you have or how great your skills are. If it's not set up properly, we're not going to do a good job. And that, of course, the biggest tragedy there is we have members that need our service and they're not going to be able to participate because it really wasn't set up properly. So I wanted to do this is to go back to that decision-maker appointment and talking about all the great things that Alistair talked about, is getting the buy-in from the decision maker and things like that. One of the things I want to make sure that we're all mindful of is when we make a decision maker appointment, typically we're asking for 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes, maybe it was 10 minutes. But whatever we ask for, we got to make sure that we adhere to that time frame, because that's our very first impression there. We can't take 45 minutes when we said 15 and then expect them to believe us when we say we only need 15 minutes to do an enrollment. So what I would suggest is at the end of that decision-maker meeting or at the end of your time, if you have not covered these next steps that I'm going to be talking about, that we either extend the time during that meeting and getting their okay to do so. Number two, I would suggest at a minimum a subsequent conference call, but what I like to do personally would be a subsequent meeting. And that's going to be that meeting that's talking about the logistics. What do you do between the decision maker and the enrollment? So first of all, we want to talk about that company buy-in. It's absolutely critical that not just the decision maker, but other influencers within the company understand and understand the benefit to the company. If we can articulate the value to the company, like Alicia did such a great job of the last week, if we can do that, then we're going to have, it's going to be an easier road for us to lay out coming in and actually doing the enrollment. So quick example is if you have the decision maker, it could be the president of the company. And they might think, well, that's great, that's fantastic, come on in. But if we haven't reached out to different department heads or different people that are going to help facilitate that and get their buy-in, it's still going to be a difficult road, even if it's the top person that you're talking to. There are influencers of those people that I think it's very critical that we reach out to, we get their buy-in, we sit down with them, talk to them so that we have their support and that they understand that it's not just a benefit, not just a service, but this is a partnership that we're talking about. We're bringing a solution to that company and to their different departments and to the employees and their families. So the second thing is going to be the yellow card. We all know that it's something that we need to get signed. That has to be signed, of course, prior to speaking to the employee groups. But just a couple of things on the yellow card. I love it how the corporate office made some changes, listening to the field about we didn't want commission information on the front page of that yellow card. So for those of you that might have some old ones that's just on one sheet, the new ones, of course, have the two sheets because it's how somebody gets paid and all that kind of stuff really isn't anything we need to share with the client. So my suggestion is I just use the front half or the front part, page one of the yellow card, and just getting that information, making sure that it's filled out correctly. making sure that you're checking out that amendment box if you don't want it to be used against the company. That's something that's important. The other things that are on there as well, if you're using a broker, PEO, or TPA, and then also the plans and pricing. I know there's a lot of plans and pricings out there, but let's try to help our corporate office out as much as we can and get as much information and as detailed as we can on that yellow card. So it's very important that we have that on there. And, of course, the signature of the authorizing officer, and then that billing or that payroll person, especially for maybe some of the new people on the line, that's the person that Legal Shield is going to do a follow-up call with. So it's very important that we not only have the correct information there, but we take that extra step to actually meet with that person to prep them for the call that they're going to receive from the corporate office, so that we make sure that this starts off all on the right foot. So just a little bit about the yellow card there. Now, the decision makers and the influencers in attendance in the enrollment. Boy, I tell you, if you can get that decision maker and those influencers, those that have said, you know what, this is awesome for our company, this is awesome for our departments, this is great for our employees, I'm in, I want to be there. That's the goal we want to strive for. We want to make sure that they are there. One of the things that I've heard in the past from companies is they don't like pushy salespeople. And so one of the things that we can do to put their mind at ease is I invite them. I invite all of them. I personally invite them to be in the room when I do an enrollment. And I will tell you that after the enrollment is done, they will say, well, I really like the fact that you weren't a pushy salesperson. So there's a variety of reasons why we want to have them in there. We want to have a good introduction, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit, but making sure that they're there so that we can, again, carry out that buy-in from the influencers and the decision makers. And actually I have a real quick story. Melissa, this came back from, remember the Activist training that we had back in Dallas a couple years ago, and I remember a trainer shared a great story I never forgot. It's really helped me in my business. He said, I had the decision maker, the CEO of the company, bought our product, and of course he was selling training. We went golfing together. Everything was just perfect, and then they needed budget cuts. And the CFO, the Chief Financial Officer, said, hey, well, we can just knock $100,000 out of the budget by canceling this training program that we don't need. And that's exactly what happened. So that's the danger of just speaking to a decision maker and not getting the buy-in from other influencers in that company so that they understand, especially our service, because it's so often misunderstood. You don't want to look at it, oh, it's just another benefit or it's just this little ancillary thing out there. No. This provides value to the company's bottom line, and that's in a way of reducing absenteeism and giving them examples. What does it cost you when the employee takes a day off work? A lot of things that Alistair talked about last week, but making sure that those influencers understand what that means to the company, what that means to their department. HR executive, what's coming across your desk? What if we could stop a garnishment before it happens? What if we could stop that employee from taking that day off work because of this matter or the distractions that they're dealing with at work? So that's what I mean about making sure that the decision makers and their influencers are in attendance. Ideally, that would be our goal. The introduction from the decision maker or the HR executive. I'll tell you, one of the things that I started many years ago is emailing in advance the person who is going to introduce me, emailing an introduction. And, I say it very, very, casually and conversationally that, here's an introduction that you can use during the meeting. And a lot of them really appreciate it because they don't really know what to say. And then a lot of times for those of you on the line that are seasoned, many times you show up for an enrollment and the person that was supposed to be there isn't, and then you're just standing there and it's just you. Or worse than that is you get a bad introduction. Most of us on the line have heard this. Well, okay, that's the end of the meeting. Oh, yeah, by the way, Lisa, she's got some pre-legal thing. If you guys want to, you can stick around and listen to what she's got to say, and she'll be taking some money out of your paycheck or something like that. But it's I know some of you are chuckling, but it's a real thing that we face if we're not doing a good job on the front end getting in and getting a good introduction. So I email it to them in advance. I always make sure that I have a copy with me when I go to an enrollment. And it could be just something as simple as, we've reviewed the information today. You're going to see from Legal Shield and ID Shield, 2 voluntary services we think is going to be a great value for you. Now, I'm not going to put that in there if they haven't said that to me. If they've said, hey, I'm getting the service, great, we can put that in there too. Then they can say, I'm personally getting the service. That makes it even better. We just don't want to put anything in there that they haven't agreed to. Listen carefully. If you see a value for you and your family, you're going to be able to participate by turning in an application today. And again, you're only going to say that if it's a immediate effective date to coincide with what they have agreed to. For an immediate effective date, I'm now going to turn it over to Lisa Schiller. She's an independent associate with Legal Shield for her explanation of the services that you're going to see today. So it could be something that simple. I make sure that I have a copy of that, but I think it's just very, very important. Okay, let's go on to the pre-enrollment checklist. For those of you on the line that maybe aren't familiar with this yet, it's in our back office. Hats off to Mr. Jimmy Parrish, my good friend and BVP down in Alabama, that put this together many years ago. And I tell you what, this has been a lifesaver. If you're not familiar with it, you need to go to your back office and print off the pre-enrollment and the post-enrollment checklist. And I know we got a great team working on updating that, so very excited that that's something that's going to be down the road too. So it's not exhaustive, but it gives us a great starting point. I think one of the key things with the pre-enrollment checklist is, I don't know about you, but it just helps me stay on track, okay? It's very, very important, that we do that. So when you look at it, it's got the logistical steps in it. Yes, we need to know the time and the place of the meeting, the size of the group, how many employees. Are they salaried? Are they hourly? Do they have different pay periods? Some are paid by semi-monthly, maybe some are bi-weekly. Are you bringing in refreshments? These are the types of things that become even more critical when you are teaming up with other associates. And I hope you all are doing that. I've worked with associates all over the country in one way or another, and this is one of the things that we need both have copies of. Make sure that all of this is in place. I can tell you that I've had people call and say, listen, I've got a group, it's set up, it's, I know the owner, it's all set up, all you need to do is show up and do an enrollment, and it has been a disaster. So you're only going to do that once before you realize that this needs to be in place. All these things need to be together before we can really ensure the success of an enrollment. So the things about refreshments, and I'll share a quick story. I was working with an associate, and you show up and they say, I thought you were bringing the pizza. And then you say, well, I thought you were bringing the pizza. So folks, don't do that. It might have it happen to you once, but it'll never happen to you again, I promise. So you want to make sure that if you're going to be doing refreshments or anything like that, is it in there? Is there any type of special needs, those types of things? Is a payroll person discussing the pay periods? These are the things that you can't say, I want 15 minutes for a decision-maker meeting and then take an hour covering these things. That's why I believe very strongly that this is a subsequent meeting, at the very least a subsequent conference call. Making sure that they're deducting from each pay, are there going to be independent contractors there so that we're prepared to handle that scenario, we have the right type of applications, those types of things. And I added some things that I like to cover as well, is the effective date. Are they going to start today? Can they have an immediate effective date? And I know there's two schools of thoughts on that out there, and neither of them are wrong. It's just your perspective and working with the business owner or the decision maker. If it's the beginning or the middle of a month, and obviously we want people to be able to use their services right away, I like them to have an immediate effective date. But if you're going to do that, then you need to make sure that you explain very clearly what their bill is going to look like, what they do and how they send funds in, that they're only sending in what's collected, that they need to send in the appropriate paperwork along with that so that our billing department can reconcile it for them. So if you're willing to take that step, it's great to have an immediate effective date. If not, we can create a billing problem which starts us off on the wrong foot. So there's a lot of people that just use the first of the following effective date of the first of the following month, and that's great too. Either one, just make sure that the client understands their options, they make a decision on those options, and then all we're doing is facilitating their needs because we want to make sure that we're meeting their needs. Can they opt out at any time? That's important. You can't get up and say you can opt out at any time if the company has said no, they can only opt out during open enrollment, or vice versa. The deadline to collect paperwork. If you're not collecting paperwork that day, always make sure that you work with the person to find out when's the deadline to turn the paperwork in. If it's something that coincides with open enrollment, typically that's going to coincide with every other benefit. If it isn't, make sure you have a deadline so that the paperwork isn't straggling in for that payroll or decision maker or HR person. You don't want to create an inconvenience for them, but then also to make sure that people understand they need to make a decision on the service, whether it's right for them, and that they have an established time frame to do so. That way you're not fumbling in the enrollment when somebody raises their hand and says, do I need to turn this in today? Then we have a good comeback for that. So we're actually going to talk about that in a minute as well. Making sure that we understand if they have what their exit interview is, what the process is for canceling, what our service expectations are. Now, just like Alistair talked about in the decision maker meeting, how we're trying to frame this up and tee it off so we've got a relationship moving forward that's going to meet the needs of that customer. And the only way we're going to meet the needs of that customer is to find out what those needs are and to establish service expectations. In other words, we're going to come in here once or twice a year, and here's the reason why. We want to make sure that they're using, not just that we have participation, but we have utilization. The more your employees use the plan, the better off it's going to be for the company. So we can do that simply by coming in and doing a review once or twice a year. So set that up, explain to them why it's important. Is it annual? Is it semi-annual? That's a time we can offer other service-related things that we offer, which is a will workshop. Even if we just go in and show the video that Leslie Fisher did such a fantastic job on in her back office, and provide will packets. Some will qualify for actually a will workshop with requesting a provider law firm there. Just the things that we can do. An identity theft workshop, we've got that available to us as well. We want to make sure that we understand the process for getting additional information to employees who are not present. Are we going to set up a subsequent meeting? We need to understand their new hire orientation process. Are we going to be there? Are we going to be invited? I have a client that calls me every month and says, I've got one new employee or I've got two new employees. They weren't getting any success having them enroll, and so they asked if I would mind coming out for one or two employees, and we've done it for years. And every time we go out there, it's amazing. The employees always take that. So if I can be there for a new hire orientation, I'm happy to do so. So we want to make sure that we address that. Also, exit interviews. If they have exit interviews, or what's the exiting strategy for that company? Because why is that important to us? Well, this is a portable benefit. So they could take the same rate and the same plan with them. We want to make sure that we're equipped to do that in the best way possible so that we understand what it is that they need. What are they getting as a new employee, but also what are they getting when they exit that employer? We want to make sure we have enough employee packets and temporary member kits, other collateral, a joint enrollment agreement. I know I've had a lot of people ask me for this because I do work with other associates. I think it's so important that we get things in writing. It's just a simple agreement that says, listen, this is what we've agreed to. You're going to bring this. I'm going to bring that. Here's who's doing supplies. Here's who's doing the speaking. Here's who's doing the follow-up. Here's what the commission share is. This is what we've agreed to. Is it a one-time deal? Are we going to have this going on? You've got associates who can have contacts, and they want to team up with someone who is a producer, and they don't want to be involved in the business, so they want you to continue to service. Or you have people that are new to the business. They do want to learn it. We're there to train them properly using your upline support team, using your field trainers, BVPs, that to make sure that we're rolling it out. And that's an opportunity where they can actually train as they go along. So maybe it's just a one-time deal where you're sharing commission and not moving forward. So making sure that we're covering that. And then also, of course, setting up the appointment for the small biz plan if we're leading by group. So that's a lot of information for the pre-enrollment checklist. I'm looking forward to the updated version. But again, go to the one in your back office and make sure that we are covering that. So important. So moving on next, what are we shooting for really? Voluntary, required meetings. Well, our optimum, I'll tell you, in my perfect world, I want a required meeting, and it's just me. It's just Legal Shield. And if I need to share it with maybe another one or two vendors, that's great. But if it's just Legal Shield and we can get in there, whether it's a lunch meeting or whether we can go in there at another time and set up a meeting, that's your best scenario because we have time. They're not making decisions on other benefits. So I always want to do that if we can. Tagging onto an existing meeting. At the end of the decision maker appointment, I don't ask, how would you like to roll this out? I always just ask, when is your next meeting? When is your next meeting? Not let them tell you if they don't have meetings, but if they do have meetings, I'd rather wait, 4 months, for an enrollment or 6 months and have a required meeting than to try to do voluntary meetings and try to get people that don't understand what the service is to show up. So just understand that that's what we're shooting for, tagging on to an existing meeting. Any type of a meeting that they have, we can take 15 minutes on that agenda. It's enough for people to know they either want the service or not. I think everybody on the line that does this a lot, you understand that, with the preventative area of the legal plan, it's that area that they decided whether they're getting the service or not. So we don't have to cover every single thing and take a 30-minute presentation. We can really cover it in shorter time frames as long as we're hitting the main points where they can make an educated and informed decision. Open enrollment participation, not my favorite, but you know what? I have a lot of clients that's the only time that we can get in. So if it is, we're going to step up to the plate there, and our goal is to keep moving up that ladder. I love how my friend Mark Seguin always said, our goal is to be invited back. I've always said that. We need to be invited back. So what do? Sometimes you sit in that open enrollment meeting and you may not have a chance to present, but then one year, maybe you do, like Steve Baker, works on something for 8 years and then he gets an opportunity to actually present. Well, that's just meeting the client's needs and waiting for that window of opportunity. So sometimes that's all we have, and that's where we're going to go with that. And then there's multiple vendor meetings as well. It could be 2 other vendors. Sometimes they'll have a subsequent dental meeting or a 401k, and we're teaming with that vendor. Just a note on that, make sure we're being respectful of that vendor's time. Don't be the company that takes too much time so we're shorting somebody else's time frame. What do you say in 5 minutes or less? Well, you don't just speak faster and try to cram more information in. What you want to do is pick out those key components. Again, I think the most important piece that we have and the most important thing that we can say in any enrollment is, have you ever? It doesn't matter if you have unlimited consultation if you've never used an attorney before. It doesn't matter about the feature and benefit of our service if they can't make a connection. So it's so important that in those 5 minutes you start out with, is your will current, moving traffic violations, how did you handle your last consumer challenge, contract and document review, the things that we all know that we use our plans for on a regular basis. We can get value in that right away, and that's what keeps the plans on the books. So there's just a few things you need to pull out on the legal plan and identity theft that you can do in 5 minutes or less. And then, Melissa, too, sometimes I know you've run into this as well. You're told you're going to have 10 minutes, and we get to the end of the enrollment, and they come up to you and they say, I'm so sorry, we don't have any time for you at all.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do when somebody says to you, we have no time for you, and you're just sitting there, and maybe you're in the back of the room with your booth, your Legal Shield booth, and they don't have time. This is what I've done, and I can honestly tell you no one has ever denied me this. I will say, you know what, I totally understand. I can appreciate that. Do you mind if I just introduce myself to the group? And what happens is when I say I'm going to introduce myself, in literally under 20 seconds I can say, hey, gang, my name is Lisa Schiller. I'm with Legal Shield. I've got a booth there in the back. For those of you that are thinking about getting your will done, or maybe you've had your share of traffic tickets, consumer challenges, and boy, you're really concerned about identity theft and what it means. Hey, stop back by the booth. I'd love to introduce myself to you and give you a packet. I mean, that's my introduction, but it gives them enough to know, hey, I want to stop the booth because I want more information. So that, if we're going to do open enrollment or voluntary meetings, we want to make sure we are promoting the meeting. So what do? Again, we can send things out. We've got flyers that we can send out. If it's a new client, and this is just me, if it's a new client and I'm trying to bring people to a voluntary meeting, I literally just have a sheet that says, have you ever? It's just got a bunch of questions on it. Join us for a meeting at such and such a time for pizza or for donuts and coffee, whatever it is. And I do that because I don't want a preconceived notion, an idea from the employee coming into that meeting. So it really is just a list of questions, and it says I've had the best success with just that. If I say legal anywhere, they might think, oh, well, I don't need an attorney, or I've got something through my bank for identity theft. So I literally, if it's, again, a brand new company, it's a list of questions. Join us for this and that. So if it's voluntary, you need to get them in the room. So you can do that with promoting with flyers. We can also do that by offering raffles. We always want to make sure that we check with the company and the decision makers, make sure it's okay to do a raffle, make sure that we're including everybody in that raffle, make sure if there's any local or state laws that are applicable about raffles that we're abiding by those. But a lot of times they really want that. They want you to give away a gas card or a gift card to a restaurant or depending on the size of the group, you can give away a notebook or whatever you want to do, but making sure that they understand that there'll be something that it will draw them into the meeting. So food, raffles, all those kinds of good things. And then benefit fairs I'll just touch on real quickly. It's just important that we set a table up effectively. And what does that mean? We want to make sure that we're showing the progressive image of Legal Shield. It needs to be Legal Shield. We've got the best marketing collateral we've ever had in the history of our company, so we should be using that with the proper skirting. I love to have, chocolate's a big thing for me. I try not to eat too much while I'm in my own booth, but I love to put that out there. And then I always have a raffle. I make sure that it's okay. I have it right on my booth. I love doing the Legal Shield ceramic coffee mug with chocolates and a Starbucks card, $50 card or whatever you're going to do. But instead of them just filling out their name and number and putting in the box for a prize, I have little mini, what I call have you evers. And all it is a little sheet, and I say, check off all that's ever happened to you or somebody you know. And they have to circle that or check it off, and then they put their name at the bottom. Well, what does that do? That just forces them to look at those questions so that they now, instead of just putting their name in the hopper for a prize, they've had to think about what it is that we're offering them. So it's a little bit of a suggestion there that I think that can help you in getting more people to actually take a packet from you and really look at it when they're just blazing by your booth really quickly. So that's just a suggestion there for benefit fairs. And then moving on to our enrollment itself. Of course, we obviously want to arrive early. We're going to want to visit with the employees and staff. If you've got different departments that you can walk around to, the voluntary meeting especially. I was in a steel factory once, and by about the third meeting where nobody showed up, I asked for a plant tour. Well, they love to do plant tours, so I got to watch them make their bolts and all the things with the threading and all that they did. But I tell you what, I took a stack of flyers with me, and as I walked through the plant and watched them how they made their bolts, I had a packed room on my last meeting. So there's something to do, something to be said about getting out there and inviting people personally. Setting up the room properly, obviously if we can set it up to where people are going to be facing you, enlisting the help of an employee. I love to do it. Hey, do you mind helping me pass these out? Just getting them involved, getting them to be involved with you. Making sure you've got the right materials with you. I'm kind of a less is more kind of a person. I love our enrollment flyers. I've used them for years. It's got the have you ever at the top. Explains just in bullet form so that somebody knows what they want. Got the pricing on it and application. Some of my clients love brochures. Some want something a little bit more elaborate. So it's not a one-size-fits-all. So it's really determining what your audience is and what you need. I like the smaller, simple groups that just say, yeah, just let me know what it is and what it is I have to pay. So it's pretty simple what I use. But make sure you have extra packets, getting that proper introduction too, like we talked about from the person. In the enrollment itself, we want to make sure that we are connecting with our audience. It is so critical. And again, if you spend a little time with them in the beginning, you're going to know some of the issues that they're talking about. So we want to make sure that we're meeting them right where they're at, giving them some examples that are so common so that we know that we can meet the needs of the majority, if not all of that audience, so that they can make an informed decision. And I think it's important that we keep in mind that we're really not presenting. I don't really even like that word. We're really communicating with them. We're communicating with them so they're making a decision. I'm not there to sell them something they don't want. In fact, my opening line in my own enrollment is I don't want anybody to get a plan that they don't see value in. And you might think that sounds crazy, but that's exactly how I start out, because the reality is I don't. I don't want bad business, and I don't want someone to feel pressured into getting something that they don't see a value in. If they don't see a value in it, if I've done a good job and they still don't see value in it, I don't want them to participate in the plan. So I'm very, very clear about that. All right, let's talk about handling objections. We get them. I'm going to talk about the top three that everybody on the line, if it's open a group, has probably had this happen to them. So it's important that we understand that. Number one is if you're setting up an immediate effective date, this is a paper app, of course, setting up an immediate effective date, someone's going to say, and you've told them up front that they need to fill their paperwork, you had a good introduction, you're inevitably going to get somebody that says, I need to talk to my spouse, right? And my first thing is I always repeat what I started out with. I'll get their name and say, Melissa, I do not want you to participate in something that you don't see a value in. I can understand you wanted to share it with your spouse, absolutely. By filling out the application, I can give you this temporary member packet. You can take it home and discuss that with your spouse. If for any reason you don't want to participate, please let me know by Wednesday. See, because I've already got a deadline. I've already established a deadline with the decision maker and with the HR or the payroll person, so I know. I let them know that. I don't want to stop the flow of pens of people that are filling out their applications, but I also don't want someone to feel pressured, because that's going to go and permeate through that room as well. Somebody's saying, again, do I have to sign up today? I always reiterate, I don't want someone to get a plan they don't see a value in. I said, but I'll tell you this is why we do collect paperwork. If your to-do pile is like my to-do pile at home, you're going to bring it home and have every intention to bring it back, and unfortunately, sometimes we don't. And I share a true story. I had somebody that was going to do that. They forgot about it. They got a traffic ticket, and now they couldn't use the plan at no charge. So I just let them know, no pressure, but if you see a value, fill it out. And if you say you're going to wait for 48 hours, wait for 48 hours. If you're at the end of the month and you told them you're going to wait for 2 days, then you need to wait for 2 days. We just need to always honor what we said that we're going to do for the client. You know, my friend or my spouse is an attorney, great. I'm not going to sit there and ask them what kind of an attorney, what area of law, are they covered in another state. It's just I'm not going to do that. I'm going to say one of two things. That's fantastic. We have a lot of attorneys who do have our plan because it's broad in coverage and it's nationwide. That's all I say. We have a lot of attorneys that do have our plan because it's broad in coverage and it's nationwide. And other than that, I'll say, well, maybe just the ID Shield is good for you today. So that's how I handle that objection. I'm not going to other people that have something through their bank or identity theft protection through LifeLock, I'm never, ever going to say anything bad about a competitor or a perceived competitor, ever. I can always say, let me share with you the differences. And if I've done that up front by articulating the value of who Kroll is and what we do, then that objection is not going to be so much on the back end. And always we can have things that will, if we're dealing with companies that have other legal plans or an EAP program, using the words that this will complement what you have. It doesn't compete with it, it complements with what you have. So that is the main objections that I handle. And then the closing and paperwork, of course, I always make sure I have manila folders with me. Why is that? If someone's doing a paper app and I've just talked to them about identity theft, I don't want their personal information where somebody can see it. So if I'm working with another associate in the room, they'll have the manila folder. We'll make sure that we give the employee the pink copy, and then it immediately goes in the folder, so there's no chance of that being laying around somewhere. So I take really good care of that information, make sure I'm in a private area if we're sitting down filling out the rest of the information before I give the payroll slips to the decision maker. So that's what I do. With that paperwork, then I move on to meeting with the payroll person and making sure that I cover a couple of items here with the post-enrollment. I'll go through this quickly. Making sure that I give them the payroll deduction sheet so that they understand. I put them in alphabetical order, little things that we can do to make their life easier. I want to make sure that they understand that Legal Shield is going to be calling them. Was I there? Did I do a good job? Do they have any questions? Do they understand what's going to happen next? I give them a sample statement if they know, so they know what a statement's going to look like. The employee packets, making sure that I have enough temporary member kits that I've left behind, employee packets for the extra ones that they're going to use. And I don't know about all of you in the field, but I'm telling you, sometimes I think they take these, employee packets and wallpaper a room in their business. I'm telling you, I go through so many of those that they just lose them or misplace them, or there's new management, and so we do a lot of those, I know. But it's important that you always make sure that they have what they need. Again, going over the cancel, new hire, and orientation and exit interviews, reestablishing the ongoing service, setting up the appointment for the small business plan, of course, if it's applicable, that's something we can do in the new small biz app, of course, the plan analysis, if you haven't done that, please do it. It's an awesome tool. Getting referrals is really important, and again, if you've set that expectation up in the front in the decision maker meeting, that when I'm finished, I'm going to ask for a referral, then it doesn't come as a surprise and they'll be more prepared. And then appropriate gifts. And again, talking with your CPA or your accountant, making sure that we're blessing them with a gift that's appropriate, the different departments, the ones that are handling that work, and just establishing that relationship on an ongoing basis. So I think that with it, I know that's a lot of information, but I truly believe these logistical steps are really what makes or breaks an enrollment. So it's not just cash in our pocket that we're talking about, but ultimately it's about protecting that member. The better job we do here in this part of the process, the better it will be for everyone. So with that, I'm going to turn that back to you, Melissa.
Well, thank you, Lisa. This has been fantastic. I mean, extremely detailed, thorough, very clear. I couldn't take notes quick enough. You did a great job. I think any associate on the line that has not heard, like Lisa said, Alistair's presentation last week, you want to go back and hear that. That leads right into what Lisa just said. And I know we're going to encourage any associate who wasn't on the line today to go back not only listen to Alistair, but Lisa, you as well. I mean, that was really great information. And I'm getting a lot of requests of, can I get this from Lisa? Can I get some assistance from Lisa? So I'll shoot a few things over to you. But just really, really great. I was pinging Keith, and I said we're running a little bit out of time, but this information was very necessary, so I really appreciate that. We'll probably push off recognition to next week, but my goodness, you did a fantastic job here. We have a question of the week that I think would go right in hand with what the information was you just gave us. And I'm not sure, I apologize, I'm not sure who gave us the objection or question of the week, Keith. Maybe we can get that and promote it next week on the call. But the statement here is, I'm concerned that participation won't be high enough, and I don't want to create a payroll deduction for just a few employees. So I'm assuming that came from the decision maker to our sales associates. So Lisa, if you got that statement or question from an HR director, decision maker, how would you overcome that? What would you say?
Well, Melissa, this is a great question. Whoever submitted it, there isn't anybody out there in the field that hasn't gotten this objection. I'm telling you, it's a big objection. But like all objections, if we can anticipate them, we're going to want to address it in the very beginning. And it was one of the things that Alistair did in his decision maker part, and really we can even elaborate on that. The white paper that I always have as part of my decision maker packet, the reason why we share the statistics in there is, number one, it's a third party. It's statistical factual information that says that 60% of the people will participate. We already have a third party that will say that. So we need to do that up front in the decision maker appointment. But what I will say even before that, even if I don't even pull out the white paper, is I will say it's not uncommon. I mean, I literally will say this. It is not uncommon for an owner like yourself, an HR executive like yourself, to possibly think that this will not be a high participation. I'll address it. I don't have a problem addressing it. As a matter of fact, if we've asked the right questions, like what is your participation on your AFLAC, or what is the participation in your EAP program or a 401k, you've already gotten the answer that it's not as high as they would like it to be. So I'm not afraid to address it up front if I know that, and I'll say, here's what we found, is that all those programs are fantastic programs, and if money was not an object, we would all have them. We'd all have cancer policies, we'd all have long-term care, we'd all have the most life insurance. But the employees often are just deciding on that day, in that moment, how many ways can they really dice their paycheck. I just get real with them and say, so what often happens is this is something they can actually use right now. They can use it right now to get a value for their wills that they've been wanting to do. They can use it right now for the questions or concerns they might have related to debt collection. They can use it right now. So it becomes something where you explain to them why the participation is high. So when you say that up front, number one, you won't get this question. But if for somehow we haven't said it, or maybe they didn't understand it, and they come back and they say, I can understand why you're concerned, we get this often. But what we found is that when we give an explanation of what the service is and how it makes a difference to their life, we found that the majority of them actually do participate. Not only can I show them this in the white paper, but in my tenure with Legal Shield, it really lines up with what that white paper says, that the majority of them actually will participate.
Well, that's great. So whoever submitted that question, I hope that really identifies and helps clears up some of the maybe statements or confusion that you've had of how to overcome that objection. And hopefully that helps, obviously, Lisa, a lot more associates on the line as well. I know it would have most definitely helped me if I was in that position. So I thank you for being on the line with us this morning and obviously assisting us and helping us understand how to do a better enrollment and that pre-enrollment checklist, post-enrollment checklist, and everything in between, Lisa. Thank you so much. I hope you have a blessed week. And we look forward to talking to everybody next week's call and making sure we get this week's recognition and month-end's recognition out on the call at the beginning of the call next week. So thank you, and I hope you close out your month strong. Bye-bye.